What do you say, gentlemen? You want to get started? We're a couple minutes out, and I'm sure a couple people will keep cycling through, but want to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Well, sweet. Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in to today's webinar, The Power of Purple Teaming Using Threat Emulation, using Runbooks for threat emulation. Sorry. I am Dallin, your moderator today. With me are two PlexTrac experts. We've got Nick Popovich, our hacker in residence, and Sean Scott, head of customer advocacy. And I will turn it over to them to get started on the cast today.
All right. Well, hey, I'll go ahead and kick it off here. So, hey, what are we here to talk about today? Big picture, we're going to start out, we're going to talk a little bit about, what are the underpinnings? Why is it important that purple teaming is part of your overall security strategy, right? And we're going to then run you through some of the things that PlexTrac has available to help you do this better, faster, and not just stuff that PlexTrac has, but leveraging tools that other people have produced and have offered to the community for free. Right. One of the great things about this community is that people share. And so we've got great work that we want to showcase coming out of MITRE Ingenuity. If you are not familiar with MITRE Ingenuity, a little bit of a spinoff from the MITRE Corporation, and they're doing some great work out there. But we'll also talk about what's available from things like the Red Canary's Atomics community project as well. And then what you get just out of the box, with PlexTrac in order to help you get going faster and more effectively in your purple team operations. So slide, please, Mr. Nick.
Indeed.
Awesome. All right. So before we get into the button click in and showing you all the cool toys and tools and where to get those, let's just take a couple minutes to talk about why all this stuff's important. This isn't a webinar where we're going to be like, hey, buy this tool, use this thing, do this, and suddenly all the bad guys are gone away and you have a completely secure posture. No, we're going to talk about purple teaming today. But I do want to highlight that this is one component. We are big believers at PlexTrac, not believers. We are big believers at PlexTrac on a comprehensive strategy that is centered on the concept of continuous testing. If you think back really just even 5 years ago, if you look at this little pie chart thing I got going on the left-hand side here, basically most organizations' security program was composed of vulnerability scanning, whether that's ATT&CK, as part of your normal release process, your SDLC, or whether that's network scanning, whatever it is, where do we use the tool to find the things that are obvious low-hanging fruit? If you're new to the information security game and you're wondering where to start, that's where you start, right? Knock out the small stuff, the easy stuff, go buy yourself the tools, use the free tools that are out there. But then as organizations mature, they move beyond that to start to bring in more of that offensive testing piece, right? And that's where your pen testing comes in. And pen testing is awesome. And I believe, and I'm sure our hacker in residence believes, that pen testing really does provide the most valuable data for your proactive security efforts. However, pen testing is expensive, right? And there's not, and so if you want to do it more than the one time a year that you got the budget, you've got a couple options, but there ain't many. You can hire an internal red team, which is cool. And I encourage you, if you've got the resources, to do that. And then you can get more regular and recurring pen testing, but that's not the reality. One of the nice things about our vantage point here is PlexTrac is we get to see how all different kinds of organizations are architected for their security efforts. And I can tell you that there are very few organizations out there that have robust internal teams, and they are generally Fortune 500 type companies. And sometimes they don't even survive, tough financial times. We've had wonderful partnerships with amazing companies. But just due to fiscal constraints, they went back to outsourcing that stuff. And when that happens, your pen testing isn't going to happen more than the time you got budget for. So vuln scanning, pen testing, they're great, right? But those two by themselves are not going to get you to where you want to be for continuous testing. And what do I mean by continuous testing? We're talking about ensuring that we are on a regular, routine, recurring basis using a variety of tools to detect newly introduced vulnerabilities into our environment so that we can remediate them, and reduce our temporal attack surface. How long are these things actually present in our environment? If you're just living in the world of the left-hand side of this pie chart, and you don't have a dedicated internal red team, you're probably getting pen tested once a year. So what about those other 11 months? What happens if it's, you get your pen test in early December of 2021? Well, we all know what happened in late December of 2021, right? Log4j, right? And that one was a real beast to determine where it existed in environments. This is buried everywhere, right? Or things that are less sexy, right? It's just about the fact that if you're only doing this, you're not getting the perspective of the offensive security testing that is going to help you identify where those things exist. The other problem is that it's going to be just necessarily limited in scope. As we said, these things are expensive, right? Nick, I'm sure, if you want to talk about, you go in, how long do you usually have on an engagement? Week, 2 weeks?
Yeah, typically you're looking at bucketing it by 40 hours. The common, it's 40 hours external testing, 40 hours internal, perhaps. That's a standard. So yeah, you get a week or two to go in and do that voodoo that you do.
Yeah, exactly. And when you do that, because you're time constrained, you're time boxed, you've probably got a fairly standard playbook, right? You're going to use some of these techniques, that you want to get far, you want to get to, get the flags, but you're probably going to always deploy responder. You're going to do things like that, right? If you're in a network type world. But bottom line is you don't have the scope to say, hey, we think that based upon the risk profile of our organization, we may be targeted by, APT-19. And so in addition to, using all the standard tools of the trade, we want to replicate how an adversary would actually take us on. Nick, in your time, how frequent or infrequent was it where you were actually afforded an opportunity to tailor an engagement to do real threat emulation?
Yeah, that's a good, as with anything, you talk about like tailoring a suit, tailoring anything, that comes with cost. So you're talking about a cost intensive offering already. At times, at least in my experience, when it comes to threat emulation and using specific threat informed techniques, that's going to be under the umbrella of a customized engagement. And so that's going to take more time, more planning, and at times be more costly at times for an organization to be able to leverage that, especially if it's outsourcing. And so as we see the industry moving towards, because I think the writing's on the wall, I think we see that as an industry, as a technology ecosystem, we cannot simply rely on point in time assessments. We can't play head in the sand in those other 11 months. So there's definitely a push for continuous assessment and testing, attack surface management, pen test as a service, to try and find that sweet spot that makes it cost effective. But then it's also not just a vanilla generic playbook that you're running against, where you're actually leveraging some of that intelligence. Yeah, absolutely.
So that brings us to the right-hand side of the pie here, right? And so now we're starting to introduce some of these new concepts that are filling in some of those gaps. And obviously we're going to talk about purple teaming today, but I do want to highlight that a piece of the pie you can't, if you're not tracking the emergence of breach and attack simulation or pen testing as a service, these are tools you need to have in your tool bag, right? And there's a lot of great organizations that are out there offering these tools. There is, there's Horizon 3, there's Pantera, there's Scythe, there's Blind Spot, tons of great tools that are out there. And by the way, PlexTrac is built to handle the data from these things, but these things are going to fill some of the gaps in that 11 months, but they're generally, in most cases, going to be still a little bit generic, some of but we're early in the game here. We're starting to see some of these tools develop more true threat emulation. But these are filling in that gap of the 11 months. They're bringing some of the same offensive techniques that you would get through a manual pen test. Some of them, it's not equivalent, not the same, different. But the advantage is, man, I can have these things firing every day if I wanted to, right? And I can look at the deltas. Okay, do I have anything new today that was successful from an offensive perspective that wasn't successful on my last release cycle, or whatever it is, right? So it is an incredible way of filling in the gap on that. However, you don't have a whole lot of control, quite frankly, over what you are going to be testing, what techniques are going to be utilized. You may have some options, but if you think you're going to grab one of these tools and say, I'd like you to replicate, the normal attack tactics, techniques, procedures of a given APT, that's probably not happening for you. So here we get finally to why we're all here today, right? Which is talk about purple teaming, because purple teaming's got a lot of great advantages. I'm not going to spend too much time waxing poetic so that we can spend time actually getting into the platform. We got some great white papers out there. You go to PlexTrac.com. You can download some good stuff on that. But some things I do want to highlight, okay? When you have a regular and routine, by the way, I never even defined purple teaming. Thanks. Hey, Nick, why don't you define purple teaming for us?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Folks probably get the gist, but it's always good to, I guess, define it. Purple teaming is that collaborative assessment. It's a collaboration between offensive security practitioners who are executing engagements, trying to probe and demonstrate effectiveness or lack of efficacy of security controls with a team of defenders in a very collaborative nature. The engagements typically are going to be scoped together, begin together. Everyone's in lockstep, and there's a highly collaborative, we're doing this activity. Can you see it? Can you detect it? To really hone in the telemetry and the tooling. Actually, I did want to make one kind of comment and note. I really liked, Sean, how you mentioned that these emerging suites, technologies, and concepts of breach and attack simulation and pen testing as a service, it's really tantamount to another tool in the security practitioners, tool belt. So these toolings and services, a lot of these are sometimes coupled with maybe a platform or tooling or a set of services that align with it. It still comes back to having experts either in-house or out of house, external, that are teed up to be able to tune and configure, and as we'll talk about later as well, take in data and adjust. I think that sometimes in IT ecosystems, we can be averse to new ways of doing things. I can just imagine when automated vulnerability scanners started in the 90s, people being like, well, I don't want that tool. That tool can't be better than me. And the idea of automation being anti-automation or anti-tooling is one extreme. And then relying solely on tools with no expertise is another extreme. And so there's a homogeneous way to work together to achieve the right results. But yeah, so to come back to it, that purple teaming concept is really just about the collaboration of, to be tongue in cheek, the red and blue equals purple. Although anytime that I have tried to mix red and blue with my daughter, for some reason it always ends up brown, but that's because I am not good art stuff.
Awesome. I appreciate the definition. And there may be some folks that are watching. I'm like, well, that's great, but don't you need an internal red team to do purple teaming? And that is actually not the case. There are a lot of ways that you can exercise your SOC, incorporating a lot of the concepts of purple teaming without having to have a dedicated in-house red team. Now, one of those is actually to go to some of the same vendors that you might use for your pen tests. And an emerging service that we see a lot of at PlexTrac with our clients is purple. It's got the same acronym as pen testing as a service, but purple teaming as a service, right? And what do? They bring basically one or two offensive security professionals that then are going to exercise your SOC. So instead of having to pay for this huge 40-hour engagement where there's going to be a massive report, it's really more of a service. Come in, we're going to deploy what we need to deploy. We're going to run the exercise. We're going to debrief. Then we're going to give you what we found, and we're going to walk away, and we can come back and do it again. Also, though, however, there's some gray area between the gray area. Getting into our color conversation, when you mix the green and the purple on the screen here, you get gray. But we have actually quite a few of our clients that when they bring the offense to engage in these purple team as a service events, that they are leveraging some of these automated tools. Obviously you've got a human that's there as well. Great. Maybe taking it to the next level. Once we hit the limits of what the automated tool can do, but that's saving you time and dollars because now you're getting through, a lot of those just, repetitive initial access.
Ticky-tack stuff.
Things like,
yeah.
exactly,
Ticky-tack,
right?
low-hanging fruit, whatever you want to call it. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And so great. So whether you've got your own in-house red team, whether you're subbing it out, maybe you just got somebody who's playing offense for the day and is using some of these tools, what are you getting out of this? You're getting rapid detection. But more importantly, if you're doing this the right way and you're repeating your tests, is you can implement new controls based upon the results, and you can do this again next week. We got one of our great clients has been good partners with us as we have continued to develop Runbooks over the year. It's Purple Team Thursday. Every Thursday, noon to 3 o'clock is, it fights on, right? And the SOC's there, and then they take a little break, and then they go grab a beer and debrief, and that's awesome. Pretty dang cool. And the second order effects of this is just spreading that offensive security culture, and getting the defenders into the mindset of the offense. And if you can think like the enemy, you can predict the enemy. You can be more effective in how you deploy your defenses. And I think that's all I've got to say about that. Nick, anything else?
The one I really like to key off of a point you made. You don't have to have a dedicated internal offensive security team. And that's so powerful, because I don't have hard data to back this up, but I would bet you that a significant number of organizations may not have a dedicated offensive security team, but you may have dedicated folks who other duties as assigned is your firewall, is vulnerability management. And maybe you have a security ops team, security engineering team. The idea of purple teaming, even maybe out of the bounds of taking a breach and attack sim tool or a pen test as a service, a service offering. I think those are some things to aspire to, but perhaps you're saying that we're not at that level yet. The idea of being able to even take tabletop exercises and go purple team using thought exercises in a cohesive way, to be able to, would you agree that kind of tabletop is a maybe baby purple team?
Yeah.
To be able to walk through those concepts. So I think for folks who are listening in, or on the webinar, who are saying, well, yeah, that's fine. We don't have a red team. We don't have a budget for 3 years to have a red team. We're just building a pen test team where we use some outsourced resources. What Sean spoke about, spreading the idea of that offensive security mindset so that you're thinking like an attacker, and you're able to then design telemetry to detect, trust but verify. I've been involved in a number of high-level tabletop exercises. And at first, I'll be frank, I had a poor attitude. I said, okay, this is cyber D&D. We're just going to get together and we're going to roll nat 20 and call it good. And I got my O day. But what was fascinating was to have different teams together in a room or on Zoom together, and a little bit of hybrid, and walking through realistic scenarios without it being contrived. Everyone coming and kind of having an agreement to speak truth into the matter of how operations would be affected, and being able to walk through identifying gaps in telemetry. Like, what? If this type of activity happened, here's where it's going to go in syslog. And then somebody asks a question like, well, would this system be able to detect that? Well, no, because this system doesn't talk to that. So just that mind mapping and even tabletops can be highly valuable, especially getting started in collaboration and purple team testing.
And, if you are one of the vast majority of organizations that doesn't have the dedicated internal team, and you are bringing people to fill in that role of offensive security, wouldn't it be pretty damn cool if we had a tool to help guide someone through a test plan, an offensive test plan? Well, as it turns out, that's why we're here. So I'm going to turn the con over to my good friend, Nick, and let him talk a little bit about some of the tools that are out there to help support your purple team activities, where you can get the content, right, to help guide you through, and then how you can use PlexTrac to take that content and guide your purple team activities.
I guess I should still be sharing the PowerPoint and talk through that. I was actually going to hop into the platform, but I think we'll talk a little bit about the where real quick. I've lost my apologies.
Who's got a dad joke?
Who's got a dad joke? All right. So can you guys see the deck again? Beautiful. All right. So we're going to talk about a couple different topics. And then we're going to actually show you, we're not just going to talk about kind of some esoteric, how it could be. We'll show you practically how you can use some of these techniques in the PlexTrac platform to aid. So first and foremost, we'll talk about the adversary emulation plans that you can get from MITRE and their process, how we can use them in PlexTrac, and then how you can tweak them. The nice thing is nobody wants to start from complete scratch. At least I don't. I can't write a script from scratch. I have ChatGPT help me out, or I have Stack Overflow before that. I need inspiration. I need to take something that's a good start, but then I need to grind it smooth for my organization. So we'll talk about using emulation plans. And then we're going to talk about within the platform, using the atomics from the atomic red team, and how those are stocked. We have all of the atomics in the platform, and what an atomic is, and then how you, again, can take that and utilize it as you're building out. Because again, starting from scratch is tough. So utilizing the atomics in the platform to build your own custom bespoke test plans within the Runbooks module. And then we can talk about how you can go completely from scratch or modify them to create your own procedures. And this is super powerful because the ability to create your own procedures and techniques and tactics and how those map in the platform is really powerful, and how you can get a very customized experience. So now I'm going to leave the slide world, and we're going to go actually in the platform, and I'm going to struggle through clicking around live to talk through some of the concepts that we just spoke to. So give me a moment, and now's the time for a dad joke. All right. So let me know if you can see the platform. Good side. We sharing the screen. We all good?
Yep. Looks good.
All right, sweet. So we're going to log into PlexTrac. This is one of the demo instances here. So we have a set of clients in this instance that I've kind of set up earlier. And so keep in mind that a client is a workspace. And so I've kind of started maybe some different pen tests and red teams and vulns, and there are already assets associated to these clients. And so when we look at the Runbooks module, we have a number of features here that you can see. And what I want to focus on is less about kind of the engagement management portion right now. This is where we have active engagements going, where a test plan that's been established earlier is being leveraged by in the platform. I wanted to talk real quick about test plans. So what is a test plan in the platform? So I can actually show you what a test plan is as I kind of start an engagement. And so I'm going to.
And Nick, just real quick, if you've used Runbooks in the past, we just released V2 of Runbooks.
Fantastic.
Test plan, it's just what we rebranded the name Runbooks because it was confusing because the module is called Runbooks, but then the actual set of things that you're going to do is called a Runbook, and words are hard, so we decided to rename it Test Plan.
That's a fantastic point. You notice in my instance here, I have Runbooks and Runbooks. We are in the process of allowing you to kind of leverage what you've already done if you've already been working in Runbooks into the new version. And the new version, the V2 Runbooks V2, allows you to have kind of a more enhanced user experience, makes a little bit more sense, and the collections are just much tighter. So what I've done is I've created a test plan already. And then I'm going to talk about using adversary emulation plans and then what are procedures. But to get an overview, when I click start, this is starting engagement, but it also gives you a nice opportunity to view what's inside of this test plan. So when I click start on this, I get to choose a client. So I'm just going to choose, a client that already exists. And we can see, you can give it a name and you can tag it, all that fun stuff. But as we look, we can see that I already have gone through and I've created a collection of procedures here. I have 13 procedures that I chose, and these are all atomics from the atomic red team. And again, I'll show you in the Runbooks DB, the content library where you can store your procedures. These are all atomics that are related to different TTPs from MITRE, and they're mapped back to MITRE ATT&CK. So I went through and I developed this plan. So perhaps, how this could be done in the real world is maybe you see an adversary emulation report, or maybe you see the DBIR, or maybe you see certain blogs or reports where it lists some of the TTPs that are commonly seen from either threat groups across an industry. You could then go into the PlexTrac platform, find those atomics, and add them to a test plan. And so that's what I've done here. And what's neat in the platform is anytime you're starting an engagement, you do have the opportunity to ad hoc. Perhaps you created a custom procedure. You want to grab those. So we could filter, we could come in and filter by specific techniques. We could filter by tactics, find a procedure that we want to add and add it in. And so once we have decided, we've solidified what specific procedures that we want to include in executing this, we have them here, and we can kind of see a quick mapping, since in this case, all of these procedures are from atomics and map back to MITRE ATT&CK. We can see the different areas that we're mapping back to. And so what's really neat is as we begin this engagement, regardless of if you're doing logical testing where you're actually an offensive security practitioner and you're going to be logging into systems and actually running this live, and then perhaps maybe I'm a SOC analyst logged into this same UI and I have the permission set to view this engagement. Or we're an organization, we're sitting in a boardroom and we have some folks in the SOC that's on Zoom and some folks on the security engineering team over there. We're all in one place. We all have a set of procedures, And even if we're doing a thought exercise, we get the opportunity to collaborate here. So this is,
and Nick, one additional point here is, you walk them through, like, making the sausage, right? Like, let's get the test plan ready. Dude, one person's going to do that. And everybody else, right. You don't have to train your SOC on how to be experts at using PlexTrac. They're going to show up and they're going to get to this screen and they're going to start working. Right here. Yep. And they're just going to they're just going to start doing the things that Nick's about to show you from this point.
Absolutely. So here is an example. In this case, we have, the mapping to our different TTPs. We could, at this point, decide to manage different operators and associate folks to different sides of either the engagements if we want to for tracking. But we have the different metadata here. We can decide that the output of this activity, perhaps we want this to become a finding. Maybe we'll come back to that. So I'm going to say that we're in progress and we've started working through this. And from this execution step, this procedure, most of these procedures just have one execution step. You could have as many as you want. This is an example, and I'll show you how to customize this. This atomic had one step. Maybe for your organization, you want to add some different steps in there. You can go in and edit that. So for this,
something new, Nick, while you're here on the execution steps, is you may see that there's a little heading for success criteria. This particular one, this is an atomic. Atomics don't have success criteria built into them. It's not part of their standard. But what PlexTrac has done is we've given you the opportunity, whether you're modifying things from atomics, whether you're building your own. One common thing that we got from our users was it'd be really cool, because what you've got right here is like, no kidding, your execution step is what you're going to put into the tool, or you're going to copy onto the command line, and you're going to hit enter. And then something's going to happen or something's not going to happen. And your success criteria is how, once again, going back to the concept of you don't necessarily have to have a seasoned hacker in residence, Nick Popovich, running this stuff. If you've got a dude who can copy and paste something, or do that, by the way, into the command line, hit enter, and then give them what are my, did it work? Did it not? Don't have to be a rocket surgeon.
Rocket surgery, not here. And I'll show you that when we go in and create our own custom procedures. We'll either modify an atomic or probably create a custom procedure. That's a great point. So here's an example. This would be something, if I were executing this, I'd be pasting it in the terminal on an endpoint and saying it's complete. So now what's neat is the red team can attest to, according to that success criteria, if you applied it, or just based on inference, was it successful or not? So in this case, we could say that was successful. Maybe the activity produced what I wanted to. We could put the source. Then at the same time, the detection team or the other team can say, all right, did we have telemetry over that? They did this. Were we able to detect it? And so it's kind of, we get to say, yeah, we did detect it and we blocked it, or we detected it. We didn't block it, but we alerted. You can get even more granular. You could associate assets to this activity. So perhaps we pull assets from, an existing, assets could be IP address, assets could be a site name, asset can be really whatever you want to associate findings. You could even create one.
It could be a man trap in a physical test.
It could be an email address, could be an IP, could be a host name. So what you can also do is then go to a granular level. You can say, do I want to granularly include these items in the report as data? We can do that. We can turn those on, and we could say, for this site, was the activity successful? It was detected and alerted. For this, it was partially successful. We don't know why. Well, the blue team can tell you because they detected it and they blocked it. And this one failed. And they could say we detected and blocked it. So you also get the capability to come in and add individual evidence, attestations, screenshots, whatever the case may be, raw text logs. And then here's where you can add kind of the output of the procedure. In a time, date, stamp fashion, you could attest to the idea of, at this time, this activity occurred. We have this kind of running log that we can continue to add on. And the blue team can then similarly come in. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I want to pop in here. So I come from a military background, right? And what we call purple teaming, they call cooperative threat emulation, right? And this isn't something, it's actually how the DoD has been doing cyber exercises since we started doing cyber exercises. And what's really cool because it's structured. And at the end of the day, you're going to get together and you're going to have a very structured debrief. And the way it works, super cool, by the way. I encourage you to adopt this debrief method is, all right, we're going to have a clock, and this clock, we can control how fast the clock runs. It's not going to run in real time. We started the exercise at 0900. Red team, call your first shot, okay? And the clock is going 9:05. Stop. Red team's like, hey, at this time we did this thing, and then blue team, did you detect, right? And that's really cool. It's a very awesome way of being able to collaboratively debrief. The devil, though, has always been in organizing your data from the engagement so that you can be ready to have that time-based debrief. This solves for that, because what you're going to have is at the completion of this procedure, you're going to have both your red team logs and your blue team logs consolidated, collated, whatever you want to see, where do you want to use for it, right? And it's already there for you, ready, and no work required. Just start your debrief, gets you the beer faster. Back to you, Nick.
Absolutely. I think one of the, I mean, for collaboration and correlation, it's super important to know what happened when. And so perhaps this is a live exercise where both teams are getting to operate. I will say I've been involved in purple team exercises where it's very collaborative, but the teams aren't on a Zoom together. The teams are working a little bit asynchronously, wherein offensive team is doing activity. It needs to be where it came from and what time it happened needs to be super clearly articulated and documented, because then it's going to be passed over to the team that's going to be looking through the sim, looking through the logs, looking through the detection capabilities. They need to know what they to filter on and what time they were supposed to see something. So again, this is very important. The ability to add attachments is nice because you can have log outputs and different things that can be added in as artifacts. And then we just have a running place of notes. So what's neat is now we have the capability for this one procedure. We have one execution step. Again, keep used in your mind's eye. There could be a dozen in here, maybe a dozen execution steps for this one procedure. And perhaps we want to say for the outcome of this, we're going to say that the outcome, because there were some opportunities for enhancement, we want this to be a finding on the report. So maybe we want to say that this is a high finding. We can mark that and we can continue on. And so I'm not going to go through all 13 procedures. I'm just going to kind of showcase the fact that that's the general idea. As you work through a test plan within Runbooks, you have the capability to have this very collaborative experience based on what is occurring for these execution steps. And then similarly, you can decide, you can kind of work through the status and kind of have oversight of the engagement. Because if we look at certain engagements, you know, we can see that this is 15% complete, and we can kind of see a quick overview of what's completed, what's not, what's in process. And so that's pretty neat. So now I'm going to move in and we're going to talk about some of the questions we have. What you got, Sean?
Go for Nick, it. I was going to say that, at the end of the day, once you're done with this, and Nick's going to walk you through the workflow on submission, I'm sure. But note that, what Nick did there is on that first procedure, he turned it into a finding. And as he was going through, and maybe if you want to click in back into that, Nick, and just scroll on down to where you've got those little sliders for your assets and your things like and your evidence, right? So now that this has been determined that we want to include this as a finding, we're actually going to get 2 copies of this data in our report, in the report that comes out of this automatically once we're done.
I'll probably, instead of saving it for later, I'll probably submit this right now so we can work through going through a report and then go into customizing. That makes a lot more sense, I think.
But, so we targeted 3 assets here, right? Now, if you were targeting 100 assets, do you really want to spend time talking about areas where the defenses were effective? No, you want to highlight where there's work to be done, right? And so right now he's including all of these, but if I was really doing this, that third one there for site.com probably wouldn't include that in the finding. It failed because it was detected and blocked. So we don't need to include that in the finding. And so you can really pick the data, drill down to what work needs to be done versus just get a bunch of noise.
That's perfect. And I think that does make more sense. Instead of talking about how we can customize the experience, which we will get to in a moment, I'll show you kind of the end result of you've gone through, let's use our imagination hats, and we've gone through and we're finished with our exercise. Now we want to submit this engagement. So we will. And on submission, this is then going to go over to what I guess you could talk about in PlexTrac nomenclature is our core functionality. For those of you who are super familiar with the PlexTrac UI, you'll notice I'm now in a report. I've generated a report, or not generated, excuse me. I've created or instantiated an instance of a report now, but I have a tab that you may not be super familiar with, or a menu option, and that is the procedures. So all of the procedures that are associated with a runbook engagement are now listed here. And so you do still have the opportunity, once you've submitted the engagement, you can still come in. We notice the ones that are included as findings. We can still come in and provide some context, add some edits. Perhaps we want to work with the metadata, or perhaps after the fact during working through some of our working papers, we want to say, you know what, this should be a finding as well. Initially we said it wasn't, so we're going to make this a finding. So we can do that. And so what's neat is items that you've marked as a finding within a runbook engagement out of a test plan, you're going to see those as findings, and you get all of the cool whiz bang that PlexTrac offers you with the collaboration on findings. You have the capability to work through status tracking and come in and say things like, all right, this is something that's in process and we need, we're working on this and we want to assign it to a specific user and give it notes. So you get all the functionality of dealing with PlexTrac findings. You have the capability to come in and edit this finding. All of the functionality in core. Is there something you want to add to that, Sean?
Yes, yeah, totally. So, it's awesome that we took this test procedure. We identified that it was successful, that we got defensive work to be done, and we've got that highlighted as a finding. But if you're a regular PlexTrac user, you may also have in your write-ups database very tailored recommendations for how to go about remediating this. So just as Nick was saying, all the normal tools you got, one of the most powerful of those is, okay, great, because my DLL search order hijacking was successful, I want to give some detailed recommendations on what you can do to go in and resolve this. And that's where I can start enriching this by bringing in things like from my write-ups database.
Absolutely. So perhaps you have maybe a repository that's from Purple Team exercises, and you'd filter by that, and you'd have your common write-ups or write-ups that can be tailored, and add those observations and add those finding templates right into the platform, so you can use those to further the outcome of this Purple Team exercise. So yeah, absolutely. Great point. So my thought now, Sean, was to leave the report, because we do have now from here, what can you do? You have the full experience of PlexTrac, the ability to add a narrative wrapper around and give context to this exercise. You can generate reporting if you want. You can utilize the platform as the consumption model, where folks are able to log in and be able to see the outcome of this Purple Team exercise in the readout view, to be able to come in and say, okay, what did we see? Okay, there were some findings here. We have some, I didn't add a narrative to this. I could easily add a narrative section to this and start working through the information, see the outcomes, and work through that. So now we're going to talk about how you can make this experience malleable. And this is actually where I love what we've done so far, but I really get excited talking about making it custom, because I think true to life, very often that's going to be the pasta that people are cooking with. It's great to start from something, but you want to make it bespoke for your environment. So here, when you come in, you're going to have this curated repository in our Runbooks DB. That is all the atomics. And so you can come in here, and these are pulled straight from GitHub. And we can view these atomics, and then these are things that we can leverage and utilize. We can leverage these and utilize them in test plan as they are. So you can view them, and that's fine. You can see them. It's exciting. But what's even more exciting is we can create our own repositories with varying permission sets, and we can come in and leverage our own custom procedures. And then I'm also going to, last thing I'll show you is being able to leverage existing test plans that have been generated by some of the folks over at MITRE. But this is an example of being able to create a procedure. I don't think I'll step through the entirety of it, or maybe I'll just show you I don't want people to stare at an empty modal.
It's pretty self-explanatory, man.
You got a modal here, you can do it. And so I've already created one, an example being, web attack surface discovery. It's very ticky-tack the way I've created it, but the idea is, you go and do a thing. I've created 2 execution steps. One thing I did want to show you, since we mentioned it, is when you're creating a procedure, you can put in that success criteria. So when you add an execution step, you can also add what success criteria looks like. That's super helpful, especially if perhaps staff who aren't super teed up on executing these types of engagements or as a training aid, so that you can say, these are the type of things that mean success, or give additional context to the activity. So that's pretty neat. And so, like I said, creating your own custom procedure then allows that to be added into the menu of as you're creating your own test plan or recipe. So as a real quick example, I'm just going to show you what that looks like. I mean, I guess the idea of creating a test plan, you already kind of saw it. So I think just giving lip service to the idea of creating a custom procedure may be enough. But
one thing I like talking, highlighting, and this is something that's a huge improvement that we brought in Runbooks V2 is, okay, so I've got a test plan. It's got some core procedures that I know I'm going to run, but I want to tailor this thing, right? I'm going to do an engagement. And so I can, if I'm creating a new test plan, right? And maybe just bang on that button for us, Nick, new test plan, right?
I like it.
Yeah. So, I don't have to start from scratch. I can take, the core of something I have that already has existing procedures in it, by searching for my test plans, grabbing one of those, and then I'm off to the races. And now when I hit next, I've already got that starting point. Now I can give it some details, but we'll click through that. So you see on the right, I've already got those procedures, but now I can add to that. So it's really super easy to version these things, right? And take it to the next level. Even if, once you save that, that's a new master test plan for you. But, you can expand upon that from even there, because every time I start an engagement, which is the word PlexTrac uses for when you're actually, running through one of these test plans, I can then further modify. So, I can do it on the fly, can do it live, right? You've got complete control very easily over what it is you're going to do. And that level of flexibility just didn't exist in version 1 of Runbooks.
That's a great point. So see, as I've worked through, starting from a template, we can go back now, and I have a new test plan that it was derived from one that I already done work, but I've added and taken away and created my own sauce. And then think about it organizationally. Part of your work, maybe part of your pre-scoping engagement is taking some of your threat intel data from different feeds, from different sources, from your own resources, from consultative resources, wherever you're getting the information for your threat intelligence, being able to then build out your own custom procedures that are germane to your environment. So you come in, you see the atomics are kind of generic, and maybe even the point of an atomic is to be generic, and it's really supposed to see, the expectation is when you run atomics, your telemetry are detecting them. It's kind of like that old, what is it, Iker? Remember when you're testing AV, when you're trying to see if you download the Iker file and make sure your AV, it's a file that every AV is supposed to flag off of. That's kind of how you can view atomics. Atomics are TTPs that are supposed to be run an environment with the expectation that it's going to be an IOC or at least some sort of signal log or detection event. And so perhaps you want to customize it to some custom tooling, commands, or relevant things in your environment, chain those together. That's where procedures comes in and really handy. Also, real quick side note, just to talk about how some of our constituents are really innovating. A lot of folks have started to take the Runbooks and starting to use them as a means to collect an order of events, a set of procedures that they want to be able to execute, maybe even a single team event, they just want to take someone and say, follow these procedures. Maybe there's not another team involved. So that's just something to keep in mind. A lot of folks, if you just have a need for being able to document the outcome of a set of procedures, even if it's one person, that's been a huge
Nick, let me give you a little bit of PlexTrac history you might not know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
The original idea for Runbooks had nothing to do with purple teaming. The concept was brought to us by one of our existing clients who was having, as many people do, having a hard time hiring seasoned AppSec pen testers. And so they had this idea, this concept, it's like, and they went and they hired some kind of junior just developers, right? People who knew the development side of the house, but didn't know the offensive security side of the house, train them inside from an offensive security mindset. But then when they release these folks in the wild, they want training wheels, right? And so the original concept for Runbooks was to be exactly what you just said, the training wheels, right? And then we were like, oh my gosh, this works amazingly for a purple team. It was almost on an accident, right?
That's awesome.
But some other novel ways that people are using this is we spent a little bit of time at the top of this show talking about tabletops ain't sexy, but they're important. This is an awesome tool for organizing your tabletop event. So
nice.
But hey, man, we've spent a lot of time talking about the great work that the folks at Red Canary have done with the atomics. There's some other people doing some awesome work out there too.
Yeah, that's a great point. So this is an example of the Center for Threat Informed Defense from MITRE, where you can take some of the work that they're doing in adversary emulation plans. And so what this is and what you can do in PlexTrac is, let's say you think I should do this live or just talk about it?
Do it live, man.
Let's do it live. So I'm going to try something along the lines of, we'll do Fin 6.
While Nick is teeing this up, he's not going to do anything too crazy. He's going to copy a YAML file, right? And so while he's doing that, I will make a point. If you are trying to use MITRE Ingenuity's adversary emulation plans, that's a lot of words, and it's early in the day for me. But if you are doing that and you are on a Windows machine, Defender will yell at you.
I'm saving it down to make sure that it works and Defender doesn't get super excited.
Fin 6 is safe, by the way. If you're looking to just play and you don't want to trigger Defender, if you're out there doing this right now. And as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw into the chat for everybody the actual link to that website.
Nice. All right. Well, here we go. I downloaded it. And I'm going to share my screen and upload it. And everything's going to work fine. And nothing's going to be sketchy. So here we go. All right. I'm not sharing my screen, am I? Cool. Let me know if you can see the screen. So I downloaded the Fin6 YAML file from Ingenuity, and I'm going to import this test plan. And so I'm going to choose the MITRE adversary emulation plan. I'm going to choose Fin6. And I'm going to bring it into the platform. And so now we've been able to take that, and we have an emulation plan that has the TTPs already mapped that MITRE has done themselves, and we can begin executing, a runbook, a test plan engagement from this activity. So that's pretty neat. And
I want to make a plug for, because I mean, I love the work these guys are doing. So, if you're watching this webinar, you probably understand who MITRE is and what MITRE ATT&CK Enterprise has done for the industry over the last decade or so. The spinoff of that, MITRE Ingenuity, is a way to further that work. And it's basically a collaboration between MITRE, which is a quasi-private government organization, right, and industry. And so how did we get to the point where we've got Fin6, Fin7, APT29? Is their model is they get 4 organizations to sponsor one or more researchers to go out and do and build this, right? Collect the data. One of the nice things about MITRE is they have got pretty good access into the records of attributable attacks, right? So these people know where to go to get the actual stuff. They're not just making the stuff, pulling it out of their posterior. But it still takes time for someone to go collect that data, to refine these, to build them into procedures, and then to test and publish. And so if you go to MITRE Ingenuity site, there is not an adversary emulation plan for something that's keeping you awake at night. Give those folks a call. It's not cheap to buy into this thing, but you're basically sponsoring research, and you partner with a number. I think the minimum is having 4 organizations come in at a certain minimum price point. But if you got deep pockets, sponsor it all. Have at it. But yeah, take a look at what they got there, and if you got deep pockets, continue to help the community.
That's awesome. Well, Sean, I think we might be able to leave the platform at this point, unless there's something you wanted me to wax poetic on in here, and we go back to kind of the wrap up. We get it's about 10 till 10, 11 till.
I think we're good, man. And we've actually got a question. Well, that's more of a point, but oh wait, no, here. Let's see. Is there a way to include, so this comes from someone who's asking us if there's a way to include the MITRE technique IDs into the report in an automated way. And so, yes, all of the atomics that we have already have the techniques tagged onto them and are available to you. We rely heavily on tagging to do that. And so if you are creating your own things, you will get those tags. And of course, if you're downloading from MITRE itself, it comes pre-tagged with their techniques as well. When Nick was showing his screen, all those little light purple bubbles, all those light purple bubbles are the tags.
You know what? There is one thing I want to show in platform that slide reminded me that I kind of missed. And that is the ability to kind of do post-run, just be able to see some analytics on the run. And so you do, I'll just kind of hand wave over it real quick. My demo instance doesn't have that much, but you do have the capability then to see, analytics on the type of TTPs. If I'm going to clear the date range here and say for this specific run book, you could see the techniques and tactics covered. You can see, individual runs at time, the outcomes. So you can see the successes, the blue team outcomes of detections and alerting. And so as you run these different activity, you can start to have some metrics around it, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, right, cool. Full disclosure, that is a coming soon feature for Runbooks V2.
That's fair. That's right.
Yeah, that is a
Thank you for that caveat. Feature. All right. So let's see. Let me get back into the deck. Whoops.
Dude, as usual, I think we just talked to everything without showing slides, but that's kind of our MO, right?
That's how we roll. Collaborative testing between teams, standardizing your engagements. Yeah, I think just to wrap up, I think the idea really is to take a look at how the Runbooks module can work with your workflow. That's one of my favorite things about the PlexTrac platform is when the platform exists in an ecosystem, it becomes a single pane of glass. It becomes where the SecOps team is. It's the red team, the pen testers, the blue team, security oversight, even GRC professionals. We're all coming into the PlexTrac platform because that's becoming the source of truth for a lot of your security assessment and testing activity. It's a way to corral this data, track it, have oversight, make sure the right things are getting fixed. And so, yeah, just think about the fact that your workflow and how the Runbooks could, if your workflow could be aided by taking the ability of having a set of standardized procedures and creating procedures and utilizing procedures, and then reporting on the outcome of those procedures. That's really what the Runbooks test plans are supposed to achieve.
All right, I'm going to throw my key takeaways here. Purple teaming, integral component of a continuous testing strategy. Continuous testing, way to go. It's the important way. So it is the way you should be doing business. Don't need to have your own internal red team to do purple teaming, right? Don't need to go out necessarily even hire someone to do that. Find a technically competent person who can copy and paste to, not truly, right? You want to find somebody who's going to do a good job of replication, but utilize the tools that are there. You've got sources of content from MITRE, and PlexTrac does a nice job of bundling the great work that's been done by the Red Canary project. Bring that together, helps you guide you through the engagement, get you through it without having to teach people a bunch of new whiz-bang toys, tools, things like that. Get your debrief, get the learning, get the remediation, and do it again next week.
That's awesome. So I wonder, at this point, I did a preview. It's not a preview. I just clicked to the next slide. But Dallin, were you going to want to come on and do some sauce?
Yeah, absolutely. I can kind of close us down here. So yeah, thank you both, Nick and Sean. It was a great webinar, super informative. If anyone else has any last second questions, be sure to ask those and we'll try to get to them. If not, if you've got them later, you know where to find us, plextrac.com. We're happy to show you a personalized demo of Runbooks. Plextrac.com/demo is the place to go for that as well. We've got a lot of great resources on our YouTube, our website, and you'll see a lot of that through our social media as well. So go check out our YouTube. We've got a great demo of Runbooks on there. You'll find a ton of great content there as well. And like I mentioned, keep up with us on all the socials to find all the great stuff that we are doing. But yeah.
Hit me up on MySpace.
Oh, go ahead.
Said hit me up on MySpace.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Yeah. Not on TikTok yet. We'll get Sean on there soon, but just kidding. But yeah, I want to thank everyone for attending today. And thank you again, Nick and Sean, for the great cast. It was awesome.
Thank you, Dallin. All right. Thanks, everybody.